First of all, thank you all so much for being here. I really want to thank the organizers, Adrian and Anna, as well as Charu for the fantastic organization of the event and for, this amazing lineup of speakers. I mean, I've already learned a lot, and I'm going to be trying to draw a few connections between what I'll be saying and some of what Maya, Fabian, and Mitchell before me spoke a bit about. And I'll be speaking from the viewpoint of my doctoral thesis, which is hopefully I'll be concluding soon. That is entitled, at least temporarily, Struggling with Algorithmic Seeing, Hegemonic Computer Vision, and Antagonistic Practices. But first, I want to start by going back in time to the paleocybernetic age. This is how the Brazilian artist Valdemar Cordeiro called the time that he was doing computer art in 1971. And that's precisely 50 years ago. And he created this work called The Woman Who's Not BB. And I think this is really fascinating because it already draws our attention to how artists have experimented with algorithms and images for a much longer time than just this now. And when Cordeiro was making this work, it's important to draw this context. Brazil was occupied by a military regime, which was sponsored by the United States of America. And at the same time that was happening, the United States was also conducting a violent and destructive war in Vietnam. And Cordeiro used this huge computers, an IBM 360-44 at the basement of the University of São Paulo. This is the time of punching cards. And his practice involved digitalizing different images, which of course with punching cards looks like something completely different than today. And in this case, he worked with an image of a woman crying, war victim crying in the war of Vietnam, which he probably took from the newspaper. And here's the image just so might help you see the work as you can't get closer or farther away from the image itself. But what Cordeiro did that is really interesting, it was not just trying to represent the image akin to the photojournalistic or photographic goal of neutrality, like a one-to-one representation of reality. He instead sought to transform this image, to programmatically add noise to it, to make it exist in this border between legibility and illegibility. And through this algorithmic manipulation, then, express a social and political commentary. I mean, it's the time of war. He did not try to represent the image, once again, in a figurative sense, but to subvert the machinic functioning and highlight other potential ways computing images could be creative, critical, engaged with the politics of the time, and mindful of the emerging, the materiality of the emerging medium of computing. Once again, 1971, when computers did not have screens as we know them today. And so by doing this work, computer art, based on an image of war, he was separating himself, and I'm quoting from Priscila Rantes, a Brazilian researcher, from the computer art that was developed at that time in the international arena, which was focused on highly abstract and meta-linguistic forms. And this is all to start by saying that it's a reminder, as my colleague Rodrigo Shigami has written in an article in the magazine Logic, that while algorithms of oppression, which we know very well from right now, have been around for a long time, and so have radical projects to dismantle them and build emancipatory alternatives. Now, the struggle then is not new to computer vision. And as the title indicated, I'm interested in understanding what are some of the hegemonic notions of computer vision. What are some of those values and ways of seeing that become hegemonic today with those algorithms, trying to think about what is some of this meta understanding of computer vision. Of course, and I think Fabian's talk before explored really well this notion of how computer vision's algorithmic power emerges from how it defines what gets understandable, datafied, visible. And Matteo Pasquinelli and Vladan Joler have written in their no-scope manifested text, but they compare the algorithms to lenses, which always have inbuilt aberrations. They always see in particular ways. And Louisa Moore in her book also writes about algorithms as aperture instruments, and that they are always extracting, reducing, and condensing the data features in order to generate what is of interest in the data environment. much like I think Mitchell showed us in the cases of the salience points, that it's deciding what gets seen in an image. But of course, this all comes with a bunch of particular ideological decisions over how the visual word should be understood then. So seeing really is about understanding in this case, including various ontological and epistemological decisions, which hegemonic computer vision does not highlight. It instead tries to efface all of those values and paradigms that it has in its production, and instead tries to propose those ways of seeing as neutral or disconnected from all of those decisions that are being made. So what I call this hegemonic computer vision, those values and paradigms that become hegemonic, is this dominant paradigm of automated ways of seeing that is directly tied to surveillance, be it commercial and governmental, and the military gaze, and all of those economic, racial, social, political issues that come with it. But what's really important of this is that it gets sedimented as a common sense, in a Gramscian sense of common sense, which doesn't mean this perhaps the English commonsensical understanding of common sense, that it's a good thing. It is actually just the thing that we take for granted. And in the case of computer vision, this common sense implies this notion that computer vision can understand the world like humans do and augment our seeing in an efficient and neutral way. Once again, it raises the lens and situates the algorithm as an unsituated black box. And so I think the goal that I'm trying to bring is to understand and resituate the partiality of those ways of seeing that are hegemonic against their intent of becoming unquestioned infrastructures. And of course, I connect this very much with Maya's presentation before me, where when she asked, why is there just one meaning for AI? What are those homogenizing influences? And I think trying to bring them back is sort of what I'm intending to do here. But how does this look in practice? So very briefly, I wanted to bring two examples that two articles that I have forthcoming and part of my thesis. First one is about Apple Memories. Apple Memories is an application created by Apple and that is part of the iPhone to automatically analyze and organize user pictures. But Apple presents this as and says that the AI, through its readings of your pictures, can create can surface the affective relations in your images. So the results get presented by Apple as the most relevant to you, people that are special to you, or the most special photos in your phone. And as put by the Apple executive, Craig Federighi, that you see there in his 2018 presentation, we can figure out that you might want to see photos of a highlight reel of the last weekend and offer those to you at just the right time. So computer vision works then, and this is from their ad talking about Apple Memories, works practically like magic. And so this is once again the promise that algorithmic agents are capable of understanding us, our archive, our reality, even more than maybe we can understand ourselves. And operating at scale, of course, without actually being perceived by us in our pockets, on our personal images, with a large set of other consequences of this. And I won't dive very much into this other article, but this is the case of just if the Apple Memories case speaks about this commercial sense of surveillance and the visibilities it generates, this is the case of automated license plate readers, which are smart cameras that are put on the side of the roads, for example, and they're used to capture, identify, and record license plates of vehicles. And it's very little perceived. I think there's a lot being written right now about facial recognition because that is something that we perceive as being very intrusive. While this, you get no alert or warning that your car's presence is being recorded whenever you pass by those cameras in Denmark, where I've conducted my field work. And this gets to be particularly problematic as it allows for a banal sort of surveillance by the police. So in Denmark, I've done field work with some of the companies that sell those instruments, but also in the Danish police, where ALPR is now being deployed as a surveillance dragnet. The amount of cameras being deployed in Denmark has exponentially increased over the past 4 years. And so has the time that the data being collected on all cars is being kept. So at first it used to be 24 hours according to the law, but now they're keeping it for 30 and soon 60 days of data. But at the same time that this gets proposed by the politicians and by the companies as a very efficient way of doing policing, of collecting data, it's actually much more complicated and much less efficient than anybody is making it sound. So in my fieldwork, I would speak to the police officers, and they are very keen pointing out all of the limitations of those systems, all of the labor they have to go through to make any of this actually useful. And the fact that, for example, although the company said that there's a 99.9% of efficiency in the capability of those cameras to see the license plates of cars correctly, the police officers that I spoke to said that there was nothing close to that. But at the same time, there is no oversight, there is no audit of how those systems are working. So both of those examples speak of algorithms automating decisions while proposing that, while at the same time becoming infrastructural. They become banal. We don't even see it, how they operate outside the purview of our true human decisions, while of course erasing all of the social and political decision making in a way that is just good enough. And this all, the only reason I think why, and the main reason perhaps why I'm interested in understanding those hegemonic paradigms, in naming those hegemonic ways of working, is because I think that I'm interested in antagonistic practices, or how we can respond to them. How can we challenge this common sense and imagine alternative lenses to see the world that challenge this entrenching of these efficiency-based notions. And there are a lot of challenges being done. And of course, I spoke about the macro data already in 1971, but this is more recent, right? And more particular to the case of computer vision. This is the case of Joseph Redman, the creator of the widely used computer vision library YOLO, announcing in 2020 through a tweet that he would no longer be developing the algorithm he created because of privacy, surveillance concerns, and also because it's used for military applications. So he refused to use this privileged position as a computer scientist developing those computer vision algorithms to say no, to reject it, and to stop that. And I connect that very much to this long history of how workers, artists, and other people have resisted the expansion of automation. There's an amazing book by the scholar Gavin Muller called Breaking Things at Work, where he speaks about ludism, this longer history of ludism, so multiple forms of collective resistance to uncontrolled technological development, have served and hopefully will continue to serve as a political project to challenge this continuous development of those development and deployment of those technologies in a hegemonic way. So this Luddite approach sees antagonism as a way that we can participate in the struggle against those hegemonic goals and assumptions in a generative ways. It's not just saying no and stopping to engage with it, but instead participating in this. I think, as was shown by the talks today, I also adopt as part of this in my own practice, together with the artist Bruno Moreschi, we experimented with some of how this sort of rejection or this refusal of this hegemonic notion of computer vision takes place. I won't speak very much about this. There is an article on it in AI and Society, but just in sum, we experimented with commercial computer vision algorithms looking at artworks from the museum, in this case that you're seeing in my background. It's this artwork by André Cadre and the visually similar image that Google finds for it. And there are many others, such as when Duchamp's urinal gets defined as a plumbing fixture. It abstracts the whole context of it. And we use this in some, both to look at the computer vision and understand what are its hegemonic commercial ways of looking at the world, including the artworks and its ways of understanding them, but also in order to challenge the artistic system, which also is an extremely closed system of signification and meaning making. So just to conclude, I think the point of understanding those struggles and understanding and naming hegemonic computer vision is really to support our practice as activists, as scholars, and as practitioners, to think about what are the hegemonic issues that we are responding to, and understanding that those hegemonic constructions, they're not operating unidirectionally, but they're being produced as the outcome of those struggles that are cultural, social, and historical. But in order to situate our practice and to understand that to understand ourselves as part of those counter-hegemonic struggles where our antagonisms are important and significant. All right, thank you so much.